So what do you do when you have two friends, Apostate Aladdin and Apostate Prophet? Both of them have similar names, but they're on opposite sides of issues. And in this case, it got so bad that Apostate Aladdin decided to make a scathing video against AP. Now, I'm going to go through this video. I'm going to try to be neutral and fair and to give my opinion on both sides of the matter. I like both of them a lot. And so I'm going to try to be the peacemaker here. I'm going to tell you where I think Aladdin got it wrong. So I do think that there's some points he made that are fair points, valid points, but I do think overall, with all respect to you, my friend, that you're actually wrong on a lot of the things you said about AP and by connection, David Wood. So we're going to go through it. I'm going to give you my view. I haven't had a chance to talk to Aladdin. I don't think he talked to Apostate Prophet before making this video. So this is all happening live. This is uncensored live. Call it drama, but it's on an important issue. So let's get into it. Hi, I'm your friendly ex-Muslim, Abdullah Samir. I've known AP and I've known Apostate Aladdin both for a very long time, and David Wood. Now, Aladdin is a really great young man. He does amazing content and amazing work that's really, in my opinion, helping the ex-Muslim movement, helping certain people that need to talk about things. You know, he's there, he lends them an ear, he has a live stream. He has a niche that he's filling pretty well. And I supported him for the longest time on Patreon, and as well shared some of my resources with him. Like we shared accounts for things that I was able to, provide for, being, the bigger channel, not the better channel, the bigger channel with a little bit more resources, financial resources. I have a full-time job as well. So I was able to support him a bit until, certain situations happened in my life that made it a little bit more hard for me to continue to support him financially. So I had to cut back, but I still love him. So you can see the video is called The Dark Side of Anti-Islam YouTube. It was before called The Dark Side of Ex-Muslim. So he changed the video title. Now it says anti-Islam. He should have probably just called the video The Dark Side of AP, because it's pretty much an attack on Apostate Prophet, the whole video, more or less, right? And again, by extension, David Wood. So I'm going to try to point out where I think he got it wrong. Okay, so I do think he made some good points and I love him, but I do think my friend got quite a few things wrong here. And so just a disclaimer, I'm going to try to stay out of the Israel-Palestine conflict. I don't like to talk about it. I think it's a very heated topic, and I just think there's not a lot of value in me going into that. This just ends up being, it's just negative. It's just toxic and it's draining and it doesn't get anywhere. That's my opinion. That's why I don't talk about this. So this topic, we'll see what he has to say. He touches on, Israel, Palestine, and then he goes into other topics. So I'm going to focus on the other things that he brought up, not on Israel, Palestine, but I will make some comments as well. So let's get into it. Let's see what Aladdin had to say, and get ready. It's going to be intense.
Given how I chose to begin this video, I know it's easy to presume that this is a video about Israel and Palestine, but it isn't. The problem I want to talk about today predates October 7th of 2023. This problem is difficult to define or pin down, but I'll give it my best shot. Its symptoms are evident in the conduct of one of the most popular ex-Muslim YouTubers in the English-speaking world, Apostate Prophet, or AP for short. And though he's not the only manifestation of that problem, he's the most prominent figure with the largest reach, and therefore the largest potential to cause harm. So it feels to me more urgent to voice my displeasure about him first. All opinions I share in this video are my own, but they're also commonly echoed among other ex-Muslims. First, I'd like to tell you a bit about my first exposure and my first impressions of AP. I think it's important to understand where I'm coming from. Years ago when I first found his channel, I had already lost almost all of my faith. It had been years of doubt and self-doubt up until I decided to get to the bottom of things and determine once and for all what I think about Islam. And like many Muslims and ex-Muslims over the past several years, Apostate Prophet was my first exposure to Islamic criticism on this website. But there was something about his delivery that made me uneasy. He had a tone of righteous indignation and a consistently sarcastic demeanor. When I thought of AP, I imagined him with a condescending and mocking smirk on his face. Like many ex-Muslims, I had felt a shock from realizing the extent of Islam's darker side, and I didn't want to transfer that emotion onto him. Don't shoot the messenger. But even as the initial shock wore off, I felt more frustrated and bitter with every video that I watched. My internal monologue went from, how could I have believed this, to, how could they believe this? How could they be so stupid and intellectually dishonest? I didn't perceive anything he said at the time to be explicitly hateful of Muslims, but he did exude a sense of superiority and disgust. He mentioned that he used to be very religious, yet he didn't speak like someone who understood what that was like. He spoke like someone who transcended that state of blind religiosity and now resented those who couldn't do the same thing he did. He acted like it's so unfathomable that people would believe in silly or harmful or hateful things, despite having been there himself.
So he does have a point about, Apostate Prophet, smirking and like his sarcasm, his biting jokes, the way he mocks the hell out of Islam. And he has a point. This is something that I think, even though he's pointing out AP as being the reason or, the cause of him starting to change his perspective from like, yeah, this is true that Islam is false, to like, oh my God, how can anyone believe this? In my opinion, that makes AP successful at what he did. He made you get to the point where you're like, damn, like this is so dumb. How can anyone believe this? Like it's like almost like a checkmate to Muslims. It's like you believe in this stuff that's so incomprehensible and it's just so ridiculous. That's a good thing. Now, I'm going to say I used to be on the side of the fence that Aladdin is. I butted heads with Apostate Prophet. And I also felt similarly that this sort of content, this harsh criticism, this like, the PDF file prophet and, titles like this, videos like this are downright maybe harmful and will actually cause people to get more into Islam or at least be turned off from the ex-Muslim movement and watching these videos. But little to my surprise, first of all, Apostate Prophet and I had a conversation where we talked about these things, and little to my surprise, as time went by, I had more and more people tell me they left Islam because of Apostate Prophet. His reach, his ability to connect to a bigger audience, his bringing the issues to the forefront. Like, he's done an amazing job, and I have to give him credit to that, right? For that. I don't think that there's anything wrong with him having biting sarcasm about Islamic beliefs. If we're talking about Islamic beliefs in particular, if we're talking about how he talks about Islam, I had an issue at one point where I was worried, is he getting into bigotry? But lo and behold, time after time, AP has proven that he is not a bigot, and he has stepped on the side of the Muslims. For example, when the Chinese Uyghur Muslim thing was happening, it's still happening, he spoke in the defense. When the Christchurch thing happened, he took down his video because he didn't like how it was being used against Muslims, innocent Muslims. He's taken steps over and over again to show that he's no bigot, right? And so I ally myself with him because of that. Now, with this recent situation in Israel, I highly recommend, if you're interested, to watch a video by Aisha Muhammad where she talks to him and she interviews him. She asks him, why are you talking this way? And she does a good job asking him questions on the topic. So I'll let him speak for himself on the Israel-Palestine conflict. But in my opinion, if you're talking about Islamic beliefs, because Aladdin said this is not about Israel, this video, it's about the way he conveys himself. Well, let's get into it a little bit more. Let's see what he has to say. But so far, I'm utterly unconvinced. He's trying to say that almost like AP is poisoning people's minds to hate Muslims. Almost like he's saying that. He's not saying that, but it feels like this is where he's going. Let's listen to a bit more.
And I often found myself omitting his videos from the playlists I would share with other people. I would have been too embarrassed to share his videos with a Muslim friend, for example, and I thought it was pointless anyway. His tone would have driven them away.
I agree 100%. I wouldn't myself have used AP's videos to send to my religious Muslim friends because they would have been upset, offended, and just they would have it would have shut them down, in my opinion, my religious friends. But again, there's different types of content. There's Reason on Faith, right, who's speaking directly to Ahmadis. There is my content, there's Apostate Aladdin. Like, we all have different styles, and there's a style that works for different people. The fact is, you may not reach those religious Muslims with his content, but you'll reach tons of other people. And those other people will spread that to other people. And so it's almost like a domino effect, right? Again, I cannot understate just how important AP is to the fact that to the ex-Muslim movement, right? Is there a movement? There is a movement. It's not one person. It's like, it's scattered different people doing their own thing. But he's a vital part of this. And I cannot understate like how important AP is and how we can't just throw him to the side because we don't agree with him on one topic, on one issue. But again, he's not saying it's about Israel-Palestine. It's more than that. So let's keep listening.
After binge watching a bunch of his videos, I noticed the emotional toll it took on me, and I decided to take a break. And I later found my way back to Exmuslim YouTube through channels like Hassan Radwan and Friendly Exmuslim and half a dozen other Arabic channels. I still felt cheated and duped by Muslims and Islam, but that feeling started to subside gradually with time. Because I'm human and humans are social creatures, I found myself full of thoughts and emotions that I needed to discuss with someone.
This just shows you, though, like, look at his progression. He initially found out about some of this stuff or was exposed to some of this content, which he already had doubts about, through Apostate Prophet, and then he graduated and he moved on to other content. That's amazing. Like, it's like AP is the gateway drug, right, to us other content creators. It's the door is opened. How is this any of this a bad thing? If you don't like that content, if it hurts you, like, that's literally okay to be upset. It's okay to upset Muslims with this content. I don't see a problem with that. Yes, I wouldn't use this sort of content as a first way of like engaging with some of my Muslim friends. But if somebody watches it and is upset, that's progress. It's okay to be upset. Like, I'm upset too when I see some things people say, but we live in a tolerant society where it's okay to be upset about things, right? So, big whoop-de-doo. I mean, not to undermine how you felt, but my point is, it's not a bad thing that you were upset about it. It's not a bad thing that Muslims are upset by his content. That's okay. We need that. And I learned that from Ali Rizvi and Armin Nawabi, that, people are going to come for all of us, no matter how harsh our content is. And when you have people like AP and Armin doing these things which are much more out there, it creates a safe space for the Aladdins and the Abdullah Samirs like me to do our stuff in peace, because relatively speaking, we're more like softer, I guess you could say.
That's when I rediscovered AP's channel, and that's when I paid more attention to the fights the Dawah men, the Muslim proselytizers, were picking with him. They were extremely intellectually dishonest, extremely off-putting characters, and so unapologetically hateful. I saw the way they twisted their own scripture and spewed hateful vitriol every chance they got. By comparison, AP was a polite and harmless angel. Even though his humor wasn't always my cup of tea, a bit cringy and clowny at times, I recognized that it takes all kinds, and I appreciated how he bravely fought back against the abrasive Dawah men of YouTube. He also served as a lightning rod that diverted a lot of negative attention away from other ex-Muslim channels. I spoke to him a couple of times over the years, and he mentioned how he liked riling up people and getting a reaction. And I'm not sure if that was his way of accepting his unfortunate position, or if he actually enjoyed being a part of the emotionally charged debate bro climate. People kept comparing me to him, many claiming that I'm a copycat or just another hateful Islamophobe. I was often asked to answer for his alleged misdeeds and public scandals, and I always maintained that we are two different people, and I don't have to answer for anything he says or does. I didn't keep up with his videos much, and I didn't notice any particularly hateful sentiments I felt compelled to publicly rebuke him about.
So yeah, like, again, it's not surprising that when you have two ex-Muslim YouTubers with similar names that you'll be like, the two of them would be compared. it's quite natural. And unfortunately for Apostate Aladdin, he doesn't want to be compared to Apostate Prophet. Apostate Prophet came first, and his brand was already established. Probably not a good idea to use a similar sounding name if you don't want to be compared to them. That being said, he's right. He doesn't have to explain, doesn't have to defend, he doesn't have to justify anything that AP does, because they're different people and they shouldn't be lumped together. That being said, it's understandable that people confuse them, right?
So I kept on doing my thing and finding my purpose in this space. I made videos and live streams critiquing Islam, and I also spoke to believers every week. The more I spoke to them, the more I humanized them, and the less I felt personally offended by their harmful or absurd or hateful beliefs. As much as I tried to ignore AP's channel, I couldn't help but notice his increasingly frequent collaborations with David Wood, a Christian preacher who spends more time talking about Islam than Christianity. AP's channel had already received a significant following of non-Muslims, which is not in itself a bad thing. It is important for people to hear about the unappealing parts of Islam and life under Islam, which often go underreported by Muslims. The problem was the climate created by his channel's audience. Picture this. You're a Muslim or an ex-Muslim, and you tune into a live stream where an atheist and a Christian make cringy, lowbrow jokes about Islam for hours on end, with an audience of Christians and Hindus empathically cheering on. Imagine how disturbing and alienating and hostile that feels. I felt it, and countless other people reported feeling the same thing. I commonly hear stories about how AP's channel distressed questioning Muslims and ex-Muslims. It fits so perfectly into the supposedly false narrative we were indoctrinated with, that anyone who criticizes Islam does it out of hatred, and they're probably rooting for a rival religion as well. It's one thing to raise awareness for the struggles of ex-Muslims and Muslims and anyone else harmed by the religion. It's another thing to pander to an audience's fear and make them feel personally persecuted, even if they aren't.
So I have to strongly disagree with the framing of pandering to non-Muslims and, doing this to a crowd of cheering Hindus or whatever he said. First of all, AP has gone against the Hindus, right? There was this big controversy that happened where Almin Nawabi, I got dragged into it too, this whole thing, Sexy Cali, and Almin got like thrown under the bus. Like, he got banned from Twitter, he got abused, his people were like photoshopping his dead mother and this and that. And at this point, AP does have some Hindu followers, and he made a statement, he made a stand, I should say, against these people, and he stood on the side of Almin. And he also got thrown under the bus for doing this. And again, he proved to me that he's a good guy when he did this. He proved to me that he's on our side. He's not on the side of whatever, right? And frankly speaking, like, why does it matter if he goes on a Christian channel? And we're talking about making cringy jokes. Like, we do that too, right? We had Circus of Islam, Abdullah Gondal, myself, and even Apostate Aladdin, and the three of us were making like jokes about Islamic content. We were making fun of it. We were bashing it. And in fact, that's what he does. That's what Aladdin does, right? He creates content, for example, the story of Musa, and he makes fun of it, right? Like how silly it is. He shows you, he does it so masterfully that when you watch the video, you're like, I can't believe, you'd be saying the same thing that he said he was saying after watching AP's content. I can't believe people believe in this. I can't believe I used to believe in this. And he's saying that AP alienated people and ex-Muslims and Muslims and upset Muslims. I don't care if he upsets Muslims. Like, so what? The Quran upsets me. Like, the Quran is so negative, toxic, and hateful. Like, I'm offended by it, but they can still read the Quran or preach it or whatever. They're welcome to do that. And the same way, like, AP has his space. Why criticize his space if, like, you don't need to go there if you don't like it? The people that are offended by AP, they're not gonna go. They don't need to go to his live stream. Why go to his live stream and say, I feel alienated and upset and offended that you're creating this, hateful speech against Islam or something like that? It doesn't even make sense. Now, where do I draw the line? Where I draw the line is, one, dehumanizing content, against Muslims, or against anybody, but Muslims, atheists, whatever. But in this case, we're talking about Muslims. Any sort of bigotry, right? Like I have a list of things which I look for that people, if they are falling into bigotry, then I draw the line and I'm against them, right? I've never seen, I haven't seen this from AP and I haven't seen this from David Wood because, like I said, they prove to me time and time again that they're on the right side. Now, Robert Spencer, oh my God, this guy, yeah, okay, this guy, Robert Spencer, is straight up bigot. His whole spiel is to call out Muslims. Oh, Muslim did this bad thing. Muslim did that bad thing. Well, okay, hold on a second. How does that help anyone? You're just making people hate Muslims. I'm not on your side if that's what you want to do. If you want to call out some of the bad ideology in the religion, then let's call it out. And Muslims are not an innocent group of people. No one is. Not saying you can't call out Muslims that are doing things, but if your entire thing is just attacking Muslims, right? This Muslim migrant did this, right? This Muslim migrant, what does that have to, what's the point of what you're doing, right? You're just making people hate. And I've had a video where he called out a Christmas ad, Tesco Christmas ad on my channel, where he's like, how dare they had a Muslim woman in this Christmas ad? What? You have a problem with Muslim women being in advertisements for Turkey? That is straight up bigotry. I mean, if that's not bigotry, I don't know what is. Anyways, forget Robert Spencer. That was just a tangent. The point I'm trying to make is there's a clear line that I draw, right? And if you were a bigot or if you were causing people to hate Muslims, then I would not be your friend. I would not support you. But I haven't seen that. I do think AP is a good person. I keep saying that. And I do think David Wood's a good person too. And we're going to get to him.
This channel became a place where you can find and cultivate hate rather than safety or a path to resolution. And whatever integrity and credibility AP had started to seem less and less evident. To sit in the company of a theist and mock another religion's far-fetched beliefs is truly a sight to behold. He sits around for hours reading silly super chats, letting David rave about Muslims worshipping a false prophet. Newsflash, as far as we know, all prophets are false prophets. At least that's what an atheist like AP believes. Or laughing about how Muhammad rode a flying horse to heaven, while David and his followers believe Jesus ascended on a cloud. You'd think AP would say something about it, but when he's in David Wood's company, he seems to shrink in presence and echo most of what David says or does. One time he got a lot of backlash for eating a page of the Quran, but guess who did it first?
So, this went a little bit too, oh my God, I'm in this too. Let's step back a bit. So talking about him, sitting with a theist and laughing about Islam. I can see why this might be, you might consider this inconsistent in a sense, but I don't think that AP, David Wood literally knows AP is an atheist, and he literally knows that he doesn't believe. They make jokes about him being atheist. They talk about these things. That's not the point of AP's stuff. And that's not the point of David Wood's stuff either, even though David Wood recently has been going against atheists a lot more. But his thing is Islam. He's allowed to talk about what he wants to talk about. And same with AP. If AP wants to sit with a Hindu and laugh about Islamic beliefs being dumb, there's nothing wrong with that, right? If he literally says Christianity is good, Islam is bad, Christianity is rational or something, Islam is irrational, okay, that would be funny. He doesn't do that though. He has the same views against Christianity being made up. That's what makes him an atheist, but he doesn't have to necessarily go on AP's channel and do that. I did that, and I don't think it was productive. I've done this myself. I literally went on Christian Prince's channel and I was debating him. And then I went with another guy that was Dr. Hugh Ross, because someone asked me to debate him. And it was a disaster. It was just bad. I didn't know what to say to him because he had his references from the Bible and I didn't even understand them. And so it was pointless and stupid. So while I'm atheist, I don't talk about Christianity because it's pointless. It's stupid. I can make a general statement. Christianity is made up, and we can see that Christianity is made up just like Islam is made up, and we can see Judaism is made up just like Islam and Christianity are made up, and we can see how it's a man-made religion that's evolved over time or whatever. I can say all these things, but that doesn't have the same impact as an ex-Christian, like some of my ex-Christian friends, like Myth Vision podcast. right? Like these people, when like GM Skeptic and all these people, they do a great job on that topic. Why do I need to do that? Why does AP need to do that? Why do we need to? And so if he sits with David Wood, and I've done the same thing, I've gone on David Wood's channel and we talk about Islam. I don't necessarily have to call out Christianity because, and the funny thing is, there's people that say the same thing to David Wood. They're like, why don't you call out Abdullah when I was on his channel? Why are you bringing this atheist on your channel? He attacks Christianity. He's against the Bible, blah, blah, blah. Like
you, because I get asked, hey, David, you just posted that from this ex-Muslim, but he's an atheist. Why are you doing that? It's like, hey, these guys are under a death sentence for the same ideology that I'm under a death sentence from. And it's really important for the world and for the future for ex-Muslims to have a group where they're not just like isolated. It's very easy to threaten and intimidate a person who's like off on his own. If you have a big community that can have your back, so there needs to be a big, strong community made up of ex-Muslims who are under a death sentence so they can support and defend each other. And so happy to support any of those in the community, even if they're brutally attacking my pal, the Apostate Prophet.
Yeah, inshallah.
With that said, I would take him off there.
Like, bro, let people talk to who they want to talk to. Like, why does it need to be that I can't talk to a theist? I could even talk to a Muslim. I've even had a Muslim on my channel once we were both, I was like almost embarrassed to laugh, but we were both laughing at some of the things in Islam that was so dumb. And he obviously was a more like sort of rational sort of person that didn't take everything, like literally or whatever. So some of the hadith and stuff he thought was dumb too. And in my opinion, I was stuck trying to understand why he believes in this, but I don't care. Like we can sit and talk and have a conversation. Like that's, I think, the most important thing, right? Like who cares? Right? Anyways, now we're going to get into eating the Quran.
David Wood. Let's imagine for a second that an atheist who's vocally critical of religion, like Matt Dillahunty, for example, had an allyship with Muhammad Hijab, a Muslim preacher. Imagine them live streaming together for several hours a week, snickering at the absurdity of the Holy Trinity together, chuckling at how stupid someone has to be to believe that man could be God. Would you think that Matt is a brave and honest fellow who's masterfully exposing the truth about Christianity? Or would you think that he's a hypocrite and a grifter who sold his integrity for a devout audience and a monetary gain? Was all that AP...
Like, I don't know if it really matters. I really don't think it matters. We can agree with people and talk to them on topics that we have in common. If myself and David Wood have something that we both think is an issue, then we can join forces and talk about that. Just like theists, Christians, and Muslims, they both disagree on a lot of things, but they'll join together against woke, right? Against the woke thing that's happening, right? They're all united on that. And so why is that a problem? Why is it a problem to sit with someone and agree on something, even if you disagree with them on something else? Right? It's fine. It doesn't matter. I mean, you can call him a sellout or whatever, but at the end of the day, if he's creating content and you might not like his content, it's his choice, unless it's actually harming someone, which it sounds like you're saying he's harming Muslims by upsetting them, but like, it's like, let them be upset, right? They upset me, we upset them, whatever. We're never going to make them happy, so who cares?
He went through really worth it if he now relies on super chats like these to pay the bills?
Ever since AP and Dizzle went to Israel, I have no one to whom to make filthy mopus jokes about. Cows, goats, Ellen, trajectory, Dua Lipa, Muslim cowgirl, jizya stained robes. Guess I felt strapped down. It's always
Feels
the news.
Yeah, okay, that was quite the mouthful. I'm assuming these are photos of dead people. He's posting that in contrast to the joke that's happening on the screen, which I can agree that's in bad taste if that's what's happening there. But I mean, we do these things for fun too. We have super chats, we joke around. Circus of Islam was so much fun. Like, those are some of the best memories I have. We're like laughing about the things in Islam that don't make sense, and we get silly super chats too. Who cares? Like, you know what I mean? Again, I agree in bad taste if these are photos of dead people, but yes.
Feels so empty without us.
feels so empty without me.
In reality, AP's situation is much more challenging than someone like Matt Dillahunty's. Despite Matt also being a bit abrasive and generally not an approachable teddy bear of a critic, he did not receive a fraction of the hate that AP did. He doesn't have to fear for his life or the safety of his loved one, unlike AP, who has received plenty of threats against himself and his family. Taking all that into consideration, I can understand why AP might find allyship in David Wood when he couldn't easily find it elsewhere. But it doesn't excuse the person he has become. Maybe this was always his personality, and it's only coming to light now. Maybe it started with the hate he received from Muslims, or maybe David Wood's inability to feel empathy is rubbing off on him. Here's just one.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that. Like, it's not a disease. Psychopathy is not contagious. And yeah, I think that was a silly comment to make. I like David Wood. I think David Wood is a great person. I really do. I think that he's done a lot. He helped me leave Islam too. Some of the points he made actually affected me as well. I don't think he falls into bigotry, and I like him. He's generous, he's kind, he's actually a good person. And his psychopathy, if I'm saying it right, psychopathy, is actually like a shield, a barrier. Like, he can come on, YouTube and talk about how, someone can attack his dead son and he's just like, doesn't get fazed by it, and he just continues, going after Islam. So it's actually beneficial to society that he has that sort of personality.
Can you imagine saying this to the relative of a dead Palestinian or even a dead Israeli?
If you shoot somebody in the head, it kills them, for example, because the bullet goes in there and it drills.
One thing is clear. Ever since he started allying with David, AP's vitriol and condescension has reached stratospheric heights. Despite him often saying that he doesn't hate Muslims, he usually follows it up with demonstrating that he pretty much does. You can really start to see it come to light after October 7th, when Hamas attacked unsuspecting Israelis, took hostages, and murdered over 1,000 people. Ever since, Israel launched multiple attacks on Gaza, murdering tens of thousands and injuring multiples more, with a lot of Palestinians now starving to death and unable to access humanitarian aid. Ever since October 7th, AP has not stopped unconditionally supporting and praising Israel's every move. He says the most dehumanizing things about Palestinians, while presenting himself as a fair and nuanced crusader of the truth. In this tweet, he recognizes that Israelis cannot be considered culpable and fair game just because they're Israeli. He understands the concept of an innocent civilian. While in this tweet, he responds to a picture of a woman's demolished home by saying, "Play stupid games, win stupid prizes." It is clear what he is insinuating, that the Palestinian civilian is more deserving of homelessness and death than the Israeli. In this tweet...
Yeah, obviously I wouldn't agree with that. I don't think that's a nice thing to say, especially considering the people didn't vote for Hamas. Hamas has just taken over and they don't so that's not a nice thing to say.
He says that he never claims there are no innocent Palestinians, while in this one, he thinks that the destruction of Gaza is the consequences of your own actions. Who is this collective you that he claimed he recognizes not a collective? And mind you, a lot of these are tweeted on the same day. The fact that he can code switch so quickly is unsettling. When asked about his thoughts on Israeli settlements in Palestinian land...
So yeah, just to add a little bit more to that, obviously, my heart goes out to all the innocents on both sides. I know that sounds like a sellout thing to say, but it's true. And when you start talking about these things, again, that's why I don't like to talk about these things. You end up saying he clearly said some things in the wrong. Like, he's taken one side, and obviously he's gone completely on that side. So I wouldn't agree with what he said here, and which is why I'm really glad that he went on Infidel Noodle's channel to talk to her about this and to explain himself. So it was a good conversation, and I would highly encourage people to watch it. I'll put a clip from their video. And I do agree that, in this particular circumstance, it does appear to be dehumanizing the way he's putting it. And he's basically, it does feel like he's blaming, maybe that's not what he meant. Maybe he's blaming the government. Maybe he's blaming, but again, these people, they didn't choose the government, right? They're stuck with this government. So not going to say too much about that, like I said, but yeah.
Land, which continued to expand to this very day, he said this.
What do I think of the Israeli settlements in the West Bank? I think lots of them are completely justified. Some of them might be too aggressive, others not.
So just gonna point this out. He said some of them might be too aggressive, some not. I see nuance here. Okay.
For example, the whole Hebron. Like there's a settlement effort toward Hebron and around Hebron. Hebron was a Jewish city for millennia, for thousands of years, for centuries before the 1900s. In 1929, the Arab population in Hebron forced the Jewish population to flee Hebron. They killed lots of people, kicked out the rest, and they had to be removed, evacuated. Some of them came back later, and they were finally completely evacuated in the late 30s. And now there are efforts by the Jewish population to get back there. Do I think that is not justified? I think that's completely justified. And the way that the other side acts, yeah.
Notice his use of language. He thinks Jewish population expanding into Palestinian land is justified, albeit too aggressive at times. And simultaneously, his opinion on Palestinian territories is that they're destitute out of their own fault, the same territories that he supports illegal Jewish settlements creeping into.
While on the other side, we have two.
I think he did say some are too aggressive, meaning they're in the wrong, right? He did say that. So again, he's clearly on one side of the issue, and maybe a little bit too much so. I mean, I will maybe disagree with him on some of these things, but I'm going to focus on the other things he said, which are more interesting.
Two territories that contributed nothing to the world and live on donations from the world. Territories where you can't even produce anything of cultural or commercial significance because you have to be busy complaining and protesting all the time and suppressing culture and freedoms and punishing your own people.
Even if he strongly believes that Israel truly had no choice but to kill tens of thousands of people, he can still do a better job at empathizing with the victims. He can still criticize Israel and the IDF instead of unapologetically singing their praises every chance he gets.
And just to clarify, that last video was like years old that he just quoted from. It should have been pointed out that this is an old video of AP's, and that just pointing out, I think it's like 5 years old or something. But yeah.
He recognizes that innocent people are dying every day, according to his own admission. How could he go to Israel and pose with a military vehicle like it's some sort of fucking field trip? The glee that these two have while discussing heavy topics is truly disturbing. The way they flippantly joke about rape and child molestation, the way they throw these words around and laugh in the same sentence, the way they desensitize the audience to these words. I don't think they actually care all that much about the victims.
Make it a rule to, whenever we mention Hamas, to refer to them as terrorist Hamas rats. So that would be interesting to do that.
It's got. You need something that flows a little better.
Okay, fine.
So you got to put it together like child during rape. Say Muhammad, right? You gotta, it's gotta flow. We'll work on it. We'll work on our Hamas thing, and then we'll get everyone saying it.
I would just say ham ass. I don't know. Something.
Yeah,
like
that's too easy. That's like gay P. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's too cheap.
And if they do care.
So yeah, I was gonna say, like, they're talking about Hamas here. Hamas, a terrorist group. It's okay to call them all of those terrible things because they're literally like unknown terrorist group now. They're considered a terrorist group by many governments. So what's wrong with calling them these things? Whatever. I'm not going to say those words again, but there's nothing wrong with that. Like, literally call them that all you want. That's what they are. They're as bad as ISIS. Hamas is like ISIS. I have no shame in calling ISIS the same terrible things that they said about Hamas.
Care about the victims, scoring points and making jokes seem to take precedence. I don't think a lot of victims feel relief when they watch two grown men acting like edgy teenagers and using their suffering as a gotcha.
Yeah, I don't think the victims are watching these videos, but there are probably people that are relatives or something that probably wouldn't want to watch this content anyways, right? So they're probably not the audience. Like, the audience are talking to the people that are interested in this topic, maybe because of the religious significance, or maybe because, the Christian or ex-Muslim or whatever, right?
As a way to score points against the opposition. I'll go even further to accuse them of enjoying suffering, as long as it's righteously deserved. In this clip, AP says to an Israeli woman how he really feels about the war.
But we're talking to an Israeli there, like regular Israeli waitress, and she goes, "So what do you guys think about the conflict?" And I say what I always say. I say, "Well, I think Israel should be much harsher." And do you know what she says? An Israeli person, an average, regular, young Israeli person. What she says to me is, "Well, I don't know. I think that we did a lot of wrong against the Arab population, and I think that of course they have a reason to fight, and we should acknowledge that." And she just goes down that path, and I'm thinking, what in the world is this?
And she also said that she goes every single week to protest against Israeli settlements in the West Bank.
Yeah.
So yeah, she says she's at the protests every week, and yeah, so we're just giving her some info on how to follow our discussions.
I tried not to argue too much. I just said, you should check out this video and this video. Like it will inform you on this matter.
So after raising more than enough money for an all-expenses-paid trip to Israel to, as he puts it, have a closer look at what has been happening over there, he laughs at an Israeli for being too empathetic, and they proceed to educate her on how it's really all about Islam and how Israel can do no wrong. Instead of using that opportunity to learn more about what's happening over there or ask her the specifics of what she thinks, he dismisses her and hopes that she learns from him and adopts his view. Who needs empathy and understanding and nuance and a local's lived experience when you got these two pompous American heroes to tell you the real truth? That doesn't seem to me like a fact-finding mission or a journalistic investigation, but a propaganda tour, parading around the token ex-Muslim and showing him how great Israel is. They went there with their narratives already set, and they had no intention of ever changing them. This is a good reminder that being an expert in one thing...
So this is an interesting point. I actually felt that them bringing up the fact that there was an Israeli woman that actually had sympathy, and I found it interesting that the fact that they brought up that an Israeli woman had sympathy and empathy for the Palestinians and everything that's happening, that was them humanizing the conflict. That's them doing what you want them to do. That literally, look, the Israelis that are not like, the way they're being portrayed as like demons or whatever, they all want to bomb the heck out of the Palestinians. No, there's people that care about the other side, and we met one of them, right? Now, they have a different point of view on the conflict, right? They have a point of view that is based on whatever the research they've done or whatever. I do agree it comes across as pompous when you say that, I know better, but I think they genuinely wanted to engage with her and to share their opinions and to have a flow of a conversation, a flow of ideas, an exchange of ideas. And to do that, they're inviting her to their platform, say, check out our platform, watch what we have to say, and then tell me if you still agree. Like, that's genuinely one of the best things you can do, right? Sure, it sounds funny that you're saying that you know better than someone that lives there, but it's true that there's lots of people, even in Canada, that may not know the history of, the residential schooling system and how the natives or the Aboriginal people were, forcibly converted to Christianity and this and that. There might be someone from overseas that comes and is able to educate someone on that topic. I'm not saying that that's what they were able to do or that's what they know or they're capable to do, but there's nothing wrong with them saying, and in fact, I think it's an amazing story that they brought up to show the people that there are two sides to this. Not everyone's not against the Palestinians in Israel. These people have hearts, right? So I thought that was a beautiful story, even though he doesn't necessarily agree with the way that AP responded to it.
Does not make you an expert on everything. I'm sure David and Radwan can cite verses and hadiths all day, but that doesn't make them experts on geopolitics and war. There's no denying that a lot of Muslims are anti-Semitic, or even that Islamic scripture itself is anti-Semitic. But there's more to it than religion and anti-Semitism. He excuses and justifies Israeli transgression and pretends they have nothing to do with the conflict whatsoever.
Yeah, so I agree with him that they're not necessarily geopolitical experts, and I don't think he is. But I have a feeling that if he wanted to talk to AP about this topic, AP would probably debate him on this if Aladdin was comfortable to debate on the geopolitical situation. I personally am not comfortable at all. And I do think that it's very clear to me that the Israeli response has been over the top based on what happened, right? It's just like collective punishment. It's clearly that's what's happening. But I have a different opinion, and I'm not educated on this topic, so I don't talk about it. That's why even by saying this, I'm going to make people mad. But they're allowed to have an opinion, could be wrong, and they're not experts. AP has been looking into this and reading about this and talking about this and engaging people on this. So I do think he's like above average for most people on this topic, right? And he'd be willing to engage whether once. Like he's on Aisha Muhammad's channel in Phil Noodle. So check that one out. See what he has to say. He justifies and he explains himself.
However,
what do I think of the Israeli settlements in the West Bank? I think lots of them are completely justified. Some of them might be too aggressive.
And the fact that he wishes Israel would be much harsher.
And I say what I always say. I say, well, I think Israel should be much harsher.
What does that even mean, really? Harsher as in more bombs? More aid restriction? The Palestinian death toll that he insists is overinflated, is it still too small for his liking? How harsh should Israel be so that this man can be satisfied thousands of miles away from the comfort and safety of his own home? Mind you, this is just some of the stuff that was pointed out to me by AP's own subscribers or previous subscribers at this point. I'm sure that if I went through his content with a fine-tooth comb, I'll find a lot more alarming rhetoric. Here's one last tweet that I think is worth mentioning. It's about a man called Aaron Bushnell who set himself on fire in protest of Israel's actions. I'm not going to get into who he is or why he did what he did. For the purposes of this video, it's frankly irrelevant. I just want to highlight how AP said that this man hated whiteness and hated tradition. Apostate Prophet is a man of Turkish origin. How is whiteness and tradition relevant to him or the point he's trying to make? Who is he really addressing here? Can you think of a demographic that clutches their pearls at the narrative that whiteness and tradition are under attack? Can you hypothesize who he could possibly be dog whistling here? I'll give you a hint. They tend to donate generously in church and to other causes they perceive to be holy, like, for example, Christianity's fight against the evils of Islam. The people that David Wood and Apostate Prophet fearmonger to about the dangers of Islam creeping into their lives, most of them have never truly faced any of it and likely never will. And whatever valid criticism and warning these two have about Islam, it gets buried under their hypocrisy and hate, appealing mostly to those not in the know. Instead of using his platform to improve the lives of those who suffer under religion, he uses it to empower an audience of non-Muslims to behave as if they're part of an imminent holy war, and as if they know better than those who experience the religion themselves.
There's a lot of projection there. There's a lot of judgmental statements about the intentions of these people, AP and David Wood. There's a lot of... So I'm going to just rewind it a little bit to go back to where he talked about Aaron Bushnell. And this guy is like... What he's saying here, if you did any research, is literally true. It was on his Reddit. He was an anarchist. This guy had mental health issues. He's not a good person. What he did was not beneficial or useful, and we shouldn't glorify or praise it in any way, right? And it's said that he said himself he hated whiteness. None of this is false, right? So I don't see the problem with pointing out like what he actually was, who he actually was. And, you know, there's a lot of projection going on here when he's saying that, you know, he's dog whistling and he's going on about people that, like, I don't know how many theists would agree with this anyways. Like if he's saying he's appealing to theists wouldn't agree with people killing themselves, right? Suicide is haram in Islam. It's not allowed in Christianity either. Yet this is what the guy did. So they're not going to like the way he killed himself. Although a lot of them, you know, the hypocrites in the sense that they're using him to promote the Palestinian cause, even though he did the worst thing that's possible to do by killing himself, which God doesn't allow you to do. You're not allowed to do that. So AP is pointing out that this guy was not a good guy. Like, if you're a Muslim or anyone promoting this guy for Palestine, or like a lefty or whatever, this guy was an anarchist. He hated, you know, he justified the massacre. He was basically saying it's okay. Everyone in Israel, even these 19-year-old girls, they're targets. How, like, you know, how come they're fighting that outside of occupied territory or whatever? It's okay that this happened to them. They're like justifying terrorism. Sorry, he's justifying terrorism, Aaron Bushnell. And these people are promoting him. So he's pointing it out, right? Again, I think he's in the right here. And I think there's just way too much projection going on from Aladdin saying that he's, dog whistling and this and that. I don't think that's the case at all.
And tradition are under attack? Can you hypothesize who he could possibly be dog whistling here? I'll give you a hint. They tend to donate generously in church and to other causes they perceive to be holy. Like, for example, Christianity.
He's trying to get donations.
Now, there is so much stupidity in here. There are just a few points to go into. One is that this guy actually thinks, or
no wonder no one watches this guy. My goodness.
Or makes it look like the average Christian that watches my channel, or let's just say the average Christian that talks about these things, is a white nationalist.
They're all white nationalists. That's what Christians are. I don't want to offend you, jihadis, but you Christians are all white nationalists who are being manipulated by AP to get donations from you.
And I don't understand this guy. This guy apparently lives in America, doesn't he? Like, how does he have such a cartoon perspective of American society, of Christian society? It doesn't make sense. This is like, this is not the demographic. This is not the population in real life. Apostate Aladdin.
Nationalist.
These people are.
He's trying to get the MAGA base to support him. AP's trying to get attention from Donald Trump.
And he's then also insinuating that I'm basically just making tweets to get donations from these white nationalists that are everywhere here and who are also religious and who, go and pray in church and then go out and raise their Nazi flags and all that. But the other thing is, it is incredibly stupid because he is reading into this tweet and making it look like something else because he simply doesn't understand a very, very simple tweet. Now,
hey, he said David Wood.
Now look, he cut this part and put this on here, and he briefly put this on here. Let me pull up the whole tweet. And David, how about I will read this tweet to you,
okay?
And I will ask you if you understand why I made this tweet and what I'm trying to say in this tweet. This idiot Aaron Bushnell, who burned himself to death,
pretty rude,
justified the Nova Music Festival massacre.
Hey, at least you didn't say cooked himself, though. All right, good.
Hated whiteness, hated tradition, and supported anarchy. Yet he is praised by progressives, neo-Nazis, Islamists, bunch of opportunistic leeches. Dude, you got it immediately, right? You know exactly what
instantly. I didn't even know the tweet he was responding to. But yeah, once you actually see it in context, just lost any bit of respect for him, any bit. Like that was deliberately massacring your tweet. You're pointing out the absurdity that he's being praised by neo-Nazis when this guy hated whiteness and the other groups as well, right? So
Islamists,
all these, in other words, all the groups who are praising him would hate him. If he weren't burning himself over this stuff. Oh my goodness. So that was the point you were making. He completely leaves off the second part of it and then blast you for something that was oh my goodness, dude. Absolute.
I mean, it's
terrible,
so
terrible,
obvious.
Terrible person.
I even made it obvious by by listing these this way. Justified the Nova Music Festival massacre, shouldn't be okay with progressives. Hated whiteness, shouldn't be okay with neo-Nazis. Hated tradition and supported anarchy, shouldn't be okay with Islamists. Yet these people praise this guy as a hero because they are opportunistic leeches with no integrity. Wow. It's so obvious. You got it immediately as I was reading it. Yep. Now, this guy either took this out of context deliberately or he genuinely doesn't understand.
He could be too stupid to understand a tweet. That is a possibility.
And that is what we're dealing with.
Truly faced any of it and likely never will.
And it's true that a lot of our audiences, not necessarily ones that suffered under Islam, but we have many goals. One is to educate people so they don't become Muslim. Two is to educate people that became Muslim that this is a bad religion, or people that are Muslim. Three is to, in my opinion, for me, is to humanize Muslims and to show that even though Islam is bad, Muslims can still be good people. There's a lot of things that we can talk about, right? And it's not just, supporting ex-Muslims that are suffering, which is what Aladdin focuses on. He focuses on being like this support for them. But that's not the only thing. We can talk about the dangers of Islam politically, because politically it is a threat. even if it's not a threat today, it can become a threat. It can become a threat to all of us existences, right? If the Islamic State came back, we'd all be executed. So there's no shame in educating. Even admitted it himself earlier that it's okay to do this, but now he's complaining about it.
And whatever valid criticism and warning these two have about Islam, it gets buried under their hypocrisy and hate, appealing mostly to those not in the know. Instead of using his platform to improve the lives of those who suffer under religion, he uses it to empower an audience of non-Muslims to behave as if they're part of an imminent holy war, and as if they know better than those who experience the religion themselves. Meanwhile, it's Christianity that poses the most danger to Americans' rights and freedoms, not Islam. Does Roe v. Wade ring a bell? You should see the way his audience reacts to any critique of him or David Wood or any disagreement with their positions.
So this is again a judgment call that Christianity is more of a danger to your rights and freedoms in America. And he's giving this example. I actually know that many ex-Christians would agree with him. And like, for example, Sam Harris, he wrote an essay about this, right? And I actually summarized and, pulled a lot of his points into an essay as well about how Christianity has held America back, right? Again, it's not really my place to talk about that, I think, but it's, in my opinion, as an atheist, that yes, this is a judgment call of what you may feel is more important to you, what you may see as an issue. We don't all have to agree that Christianity is the biggest threat, right? Christianity is so watered down now, and it's becoming less and less of an issue every day, in my opinion. But that's my opinion. AP's opinion is Islam is a bigger thing, and he's able to more effectively tackle that. Just like I told you when I had a debate with Dr. Yu Ross, it was a miserable failure. I just didn't get anywhere, right? So I regret even doing it. But that's my point. My point is that why does he have to talk about what you think is the most important thing? He can talk about what he thinks is the most important thing, which is Islam. And there's nothing wrong with that.
They turn hostile towards us, accusing us of being secret Muslims or secret cultists or worse, terrorist supporters.
Yeah, so this, you're doing taqiyya thing, ex-Muslim taqiyya, it happens sometimes. I don't know if I've ever heard AP or they would say that. Of course, they're not going to say that. But there are nuts that say these things.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that one cannot care for ex-Muslims if they're a Christian or a Hindu or a Jew. What I'm saying is that the kind of audience fostered in environments like these, they're not our allies. We are pawns to them. As soon as we stop being useful as their poster child victim of Islam, they attack us with the same religious zeal and vitriol that we receive from Muslim extremists. His audience...
I have not seen anyone attack me with the same vitriol and hate as I see from Muslim extremists. Like, Christians would not do that. Why would they do that? There are nuts, again, that say these things, but I don't, like, those are nuts. Those are literally nuts. Like, the fact that AP is welcome onto his channel, I've been welcome onto David Wood's channel, and, David treated me with dignity and respect. He's donated to my channel. He's treated me with a lot of kindness and supported me in my channel. I don't see myself as being a pawn. He's literally promoting my atheist channel and attack Christianity. And at one point he was even on my Patreon. The point is, we don't agree on everything, but we can still agree on some things. That doesn't make me a pawn. It just means that we support each other on whatever things that we have in common. There's nothing wrong with that.
Audience views him as a crusader against Islam and a savior of ex-Muslims, while a lot of us view him as a guy who profits off of people's suffering to make cheap jokes and win a popularity contest. It may not have started that way, but unfortunately that's where he's at now. Whether he likes it or not, whether he intended on it or not, Apostate Prophet is the de facto representative of a lot of ex-Muslims in the English-speaking world. That comes with a responsibility that I don't think he recognizes or respects. At first, it was annoying and embarrassing.
I don't think that's fair, and I think he's contradicting himself here because he's saying on one hand, I'm not responsible for what AP says. He's a different person, I'm myself and he's himself. But now he's saying he needs to be responsible for what he says because it affects me, and I'm being lumped into the same group as him. No, you don't need to gatekeep what he says. What he says is what he says. He's not your representative. He's not my representative, although we agree on a bunch of stuff. and we're all ex-Muslim, that we have that in common, but that doesn't make him, you can't hold him accountable for what he says because it affects you, in a sense that just because you're ex-Muslim. You can just say, I don't like what he says, I can disagree with him, I can call him out. You're calling him out right now. So that's good. That's a healthy thing to do. But you can't blame him because he's ex-Muslim and he's talking about things that you don't like.
Embarrassing to have him as our unofficial spokesperson, but now it's downright dangerous. He perpetuates negative stereotypes about how blindly anti-Muslim and hateful apostates are, because evidently he is. He teaches hundreds of thousands of people how to dull their empathy and respond to disagreement with asinine slogans and slurs. He turns people away, both questioning Muslims and ex-Muslims.
Yeah, I disagree with him. I mean, he does have his funny stay away from Islam, and, you know, they make the jokes and stuff, and that's the style. Like, I know I probably shouldn't even say this, but like, Almin Nawabi, some of the things he's done are so blasphemous that like it's like shocked me. Like, you know what I mean? Like some of the things he's done in the past, some of the things he's talked about, and I still support him because I realize there's a space for that. Maybe he's right that, they have these dumb jokes or whatever, but like that's his platform. He can use it how he wants and like just say whatever, like as long as he's not actually attacking people's rights, which I don't think he is, right? I make some dumb jokes or whatever you think they're dumb. Some people I know love watching the channel because it's funny. It's like lighthearted and it takes, makes the day better. And that's okay as well, in my opinion.
Because of his tone, his hypocrisy, and his unwelcoming space. I urge AP, even when he disagrees, to treat individuals with dignity and humanity, the same dignity and humanity he wished he were treated with when he was a Muslim or when he first left Islam. I know that making a video like this might fracture the so-called ex-Muslim community, but that's fine by me, because we're not one global community, and whatever...
Exactly. So you can't hold him accountable for what he says because we're not one global community. We are different people independently working on our own to help the world in ways that we think are best. So again, a contradiction. On one hand, he's getting upset because he's being accused of being like AP and being lumped in the same crowd, and it's dangerous because now people hate ex-Muslims or something because of AP. Yet at the same time, we're not one community, we're all different. Exactly.
Whatever's going on in his channel, I want no part of that sort of community. I don't want to be among a crowd of zealots who call me or anyone else an Abdul or a Peter worshipper at this.
Yeah, the Abdul thing, I haven't seen that on AP's channel, but if it is, it's not coming from AP. The man that invented this Abdul thing is Christian Prince, right? Christian Prince is like going around like using language like this, and he's much worse than AP, much harsher. He calls people son of Muta and this and that and Abdul, and like, yeah, it feels dehumanizing. I agree with you. Christian Prince has been banned on YouTube I don't know how many times. He's different, right? He's not like AP and he's not like David Wood. He's beyond both of them, right? So if that's what these guys are doing, I would disagree with that too. I think that's where it's coming from, right? It's coming from someone else, not from AP.
The slightest hint of disagreement. The way I see it, his mission and mine are not at all aligned. Perhaps they once could have been, but they're not anymore. And I see him causing more harm than help. And I think being silent about his conduct could be misconstrued as an implicit allyship. So
this is a good point, that he wants to basically distance himself from AP, and he's making a public statement that... So this is a good point. He's making a public statement that he disagrees with Apostate Prophet, and that, he wants nothing to do with his content, and he feels importantly enough to make this statement, which is Aladdin's right to do this. He has every right to say this and to do this and to take his conscience and make it feel better, right? Like to relieve his conscience from like what he's hearing from AP, and he doesn't like it and he's upset about it. So that's okay. This is good what he's doing, right? And I respect that he's going ahead and saying what he wants to say and disagreeing with AP. That's fine. I respect that.
I think it's important to voice our disagreements loudly and publicly. And based on the feedback I've received, a lot of ex-Muslims had the same thoughts, but hadn't yet heard them articulated openly. So it's been a long time coming. I don't think that my way of doing things is the only way or even the best way. I want diversity in our representation. But how it stands right now, whether he intended on it or not, AP has a bit of a monopoly in our voices. His reach and visibility as an apostate or an ex-Muslim far eclipses the rest of our channels combined.
Yeah, but that's... Okay, I'll let him finish.
Maybe that's due to all of his hard work over the years, or due to great timing, or maybe his controversy-seeking behavior, or his partnership with David Wood, or the fact that his divisive rhetoric appeals to a lot of non-Muslims who boost his reach. He is alienating so many of us and wasting his incredible potential in the process.
Whoa. Hold on. He's already eclipsed all of the ex-Muslim channels combined. Yet he's wasting his potential. I think this is, again, more gatekeeping, more judgments, more value judgments on you should do things the way I want you to do them. You should have a channel like my channel. You should do what I do. You should be supporting and creating a space for ex-Muslims to call in or whatever. But like, it's his channel. It's his life. It's his thing. It's his hard work. It's his effort. And it's a combination of all the things you said. He's dramatic and he has good branding and he worked hard and he came and he went into very big debates with people like Muhammad Hijab, and he's put himself out there like none of us have. Heck, he shows his face, right? Like Aladdin, even you're not showing your face. He's made these sacrifices to his personal life and his safety, right? So if he gets the rewards of that, having a channel where people can come and donate, and he has a Patreon, and he's able to go live and make jokes and make some money, like, what's the big deal? Like, it's not the end of the world. Like, it's this is just a lot of gatekeeping here, and you don't have a right to tell him how to run his channel, right? You can't say you have to do it the way I want. No, he has every right. He earned that right. 500,000 subscribers. He did it on his own with help from other people, and let him do what he wants. Let him enjoy, his channel, and hopefully it doesn't get taken down or anything. But like, he worked hard to get to this point, and it's an asset. It's a big asset, right? And we could do better if we actually maybe did some of the things he did, and maybe we don't want to. I don't have that approach. I don't want to be as aggressive or whatever, controversial or whatever. For whatever reason, I don't want that, right? And so I don't mind growing slowly. That's okay. You can't hold him accountable for being the biggest channel and say, oh, it's your fault, you're the biggest channel, therefore you have to watch what you say. No, he doesn't need to watch he should. Obviously, everyone needs to watch what they say. But what I'm saying is, we don't get to dictate that to him. It's his platform, right?
He has caused irreparable harm to the ex-Muslim movement in the English-speaking world.
No, he's done so much good for the ex-Muslim movement. I had so many people tell me I left Islam because of AP. His reach, his bringing exposure to ex-Muslims and all of that, I think is amazing. Yes, we disagree with him on Israel, but he's done so much good, so I can overlook this one thing. And you know what I mean? Like, again, I'm not an expert, so like, why am I going to argue with someone on something I don't even know the history of?
We are already demonized by many Muslims and will continue to be for a very long time.
And we'll continue to be, even if we don't do what AP does. I will continue to be demonized. No matter how nice I am, you will continue to be demonized. They will continue to attack your live stream. They'll continue to ruin your calls. They'll continue to hijack your space and hack your Discord and ruin your calls and show horrible images of beheadings and pornography on your streams to get your channel taken down, no matter how nice you are. So why should we appease them? We shouldn't.
But what he does isn't helping fight that. I use the label apostate to take back its ownership, because apostate or murtad are often used against us as insults. Whatever work I do to take back that label, I have to first undo all the harm that he's done to tarnish it. And that's really unfortunate, because he started off by helping so many people, so it's sad to see him fall from grace like that. Like I said, this isn't...
Well, that's good to see that he's admitting that AP did help a lot of people. I'm a little bit confused by the the back and forth here between, I understand where AP's coming from. I understand that he's been abused and death threats, and I understand his approach is different. I understand there's place for him and there's a place for me and there's a place for everyone. But at the same time, I don't like him. He's making it bad for me. He's making it bad for ex-Muslims. He's making it bad for Muslims. I don't see the coherence here. It's like all over the place, right? If this truly was about Israel, this video, I wouldn't have even made this video. But it's not about Israel, as he said. It's about all these things. So I completely disagree on all these other things. Other than Israel, sure, he has a point there.
Exclusively an AP problem, but he's the most prominent example. The way I see it, the underlying problem is hate. And I'm not validating the false accusation that we're inundated with, that critics of Islam do it because they're hateful. That is not true. I'd point at my own channel, but of course I'm biased. So if you look at the Arabic side of Exmuslim YouTube, you'll find that pretty much all of the popular voices are not at all hateful. So why is it so different on this side of the pond, so to speak? The world of a vocal ex-Muslim activist is a hostile world, regardless of where we are. It's no secret that Muslims generally do not take kindly to apostates, especially ones who are critical of the religion openly. They demonize us, threaten us, and persecute us if they can. That is a reality that a lot of non-Muslims are afraid to acknowledge, lest they be perceived as bigoted or hateful. This makes us isolated, and we struggle to find allyship or community, and sometimes we lose touch with Muslims in our day-to-day lives out of necessity or comfort. Perhaps that reduces our exposure to Muslims to the worst examples we see online or in our lives. Add that to the anti-ex-Muslim hostility rubbing off on us, and it's feasible that some of us get stuck in that spiteful state for a very long time. In the Arab world, it's a lot more difficult to accuse an ex-Muslim of bigotry or racism because they're among their own kind, and they're constantly exposed to Muslims because they live among them. That comes with its own challenges to ex-Muslims, but it also grounds us and reminds us that there's more complexity to humans than what they say they believe.
That's also the complexity that he's alluding to is not being killed while living among Muslims and creating content like this. It's not just a complexity. It's a major challenge. Sharif Gaber is a good example of this. It's not safe to be Sharif Gaber in Egypt, but he's there. So he's constantly moving from place to place. It's understating it when you say it's a complexity. It's a lot more than that. Being grounded just means don't be killed, right? That's the game. That's the mission of an ex-Muslim in a Muslim country. I mean, I don't even know how they do it. Like, it's like, say what you say without being killed. Like, that's literally how bad it is. So I think it's understating the issue. Yes, being around Muslims. I'm around Muslims in Canada all the time. There's like more Muslims in my kids' public school than non-Muslims. On Eid, like no one comes to school because so many kids skip, so they don't have classes, or they have classes, but it's just like they don't do any classwork. So that's the environment many of us live in the West. I don't need to live among Muslims where like my life is at risk to have empathy for Muslims, right? I told you that's a discriminating factor for me, is the empathy.
When it comes to online content, hate and controversy and divisiveness are always more appealing to the algorithm and to the masses. There's no sensationalism or profit in empathy and nuance. Even if someone doesn't start off as hateful, I can see how their social media feed would turn them that way.
That is a known problem. And it even happens with like food influencers, for example, where there's examples of people that they started off by doing something and then they found out it was lucrative. There's many Muslim converts that they realize, oh, I can make money by being Muslim. And they start like making content for the sake of that. And they're like following the algorithm. The algorithm is leading them down this path. It's true that there is a tendency to do that, to become more and more extreme, but you'd have to prove it, I think, with AP, right? I don't think that's what's happening here. Like, I don't see that happening here. You have to give evidence that he is hateful. Other than this, again, his opinion on Israel, is he actually hateful to Muslims? I'd love to see that, because this is a political discussion that he's having. It's not about necessarily Muslims, although Muslims are part of it, obviously. But I'd like to see where outside of this conflict is he dehumanizing Muslims. If he is, I'll call him out. I'll tell him myself, don't do that.
So what can we do to change that? How can we reclaim our voices? We can start by speaking up against wrongdoings, even if that means being critical of people in our own group. We shouldn't idolize anyone, even if they're taking a huge risk by being a vocal activist for our cause. Don't take a YouTuber's word as Bible, no matter how much you trust their judgment. Work on sharpening your own critical skills. We should encourage intercommunal and intra-communal discourse so that we're afforded more opportunities to revise our own opinions rather than echoing them among ourselves. We should take a more active role and participate in discourse ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. And I do recommend, Aladdin, that you talk to AP and you guys have this conversation and see where it lands on Israel.
Rather than trusting a few representatives to do it for us, like on this channel's Discord server, for example. And hopefully, as it becomes safer to do so, we should have more diversification in our public voices, because no single person can or will accurately represent all of us. I know I'll be asked in the comments, you seem to have so much to say, why did you make this video instead of talking to AP about it directly? Well, it's because I have so much to say. I wanted to make sure that I got it all out and showed examples of what I take issue with, because I don't want to do this criticism a disservice. And since he's a public figure who makes public statements, it seems fair to critique them publicly. I suspect that most of his followers wouldn't take issue with me publicly critiquing a Muslim preacher.
Yeah, so
for saying apostates should be killed, for example, so the same principle applies. Besides, how do you even begin a conversation with someone who jokes about bullets in skulls?
So I agree with him, and I see him as Aladdin as a conscientious young man that cares about people and wants to say what's right. And he had a discussion with Secular Spirit on Palestine as well, and they talked about these things. He has every right, and I really do think it's great that he's doing this. He's making this public statement and he's talking about what he believes. I do think that he's wrong. That how do you even start a conversation? Well, Infidel Noodle was able to have that conversation, and I'm sure you could have that conversation too with Apostate Prophet. It's not that hard. He's genuinely an approachable person, and I had a conflict with him too, and we talked about it. I went on his channel, he came on my channel, we had a conversation, we were able to work it out. We were able to see eye to eye, and I influenced him, he influenced me. We had a mutually agreeable, like exactly what you said. Like, just do it.
I couldn't think of a way that wouldn't make me seem too friendly or too hostile. But now that I made my disagreements clear, I'm open to having a conversation about it with Apostate Prophet if he wishes, or he's free to respond in a video, or not at all. I said what I needed to say, and I'm glad that I finally got to echo a lot of sentiments I noticed in the ex-Muslim community that I am a part of. Thanks for watching this video. If you believe in the importance of the work that I do and you wish to see more of it, give the video a like.
So, all right. So just to end off, this is a long video. I really like Apostate Aladdin. I really like Apostate Prophet. And I respect Aladdin's desire to say the right thing and to, call out wrongdoing as he sees it. I do think he missed the mark. I mean, I agree with him sort of on Palestine-Israel issue in the sense that, I think AP's too much on one side. But at the same time, I don't go publicly attacking AP for it because I'm not knowledgeable on the conflict in order for me to make a knowledgeable claim that, I don't feel comfortable doing that. I just don't. So I don't do it. But he felt comfortable enough to do it. So I do think it would be productive for them to have a conversation. I do think it would be a good conversation. And, I hope that the two of them can, kind of bridge this gap and to see eye to eye at some point. If I was Apostate Prophet, I'd be quite upset at the things that were said in this video. There was a lot of very heavy judgment being made about pandering to Hindus and Christians and this and that. And I don't think that's what he does at all. There's a lot of judgment about him not having empathy, being psychopath-like, or basically creating a hostile environment. There's a lot of very heavy stuff that was said against AP. And, I love AP and I wanted to defend him because I truly love him. I think he's a great guy. I really, truly think he's a great guy. So I had to come and defend him. But I also like Aladdin, right? I do think he's wrong about these things, but that's okay. That's why I'm making this video. I don't know what's going to happen next. This is a live thing that's happening. As it happens, we're seeing how these things go. It's a lot. I know it's a lot to take in, but I hope that there'll be peace among ex-Muslims. We all can get together and, agree, or at least agree to disagree. And that's all I have for you. Thank you so much. Thank you to my patrons for your continued support on the channel. And I'm trying to do a little bit more on the channel right now. So, you'll be seeing a lot more of me. If you watch all the way to the end, you're amazing. Thank you. This is your friendly ex-Muslim, Abdullah Samir, signing out.